Chapter 5. A Swim in the River Liffey. "Help!" shouted Andy. "Help!" Mr. Greenshirt turned on the radio. It was loud rock music. Nobody heard their shouts. Mr. Blueshirt turned round again and looked at Andy and Mary. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. Andy stopped shouting. The man turned back and watched the road. Andy looked out of the window. Nobody looked in. Mr. Greenshirt drove across the River Liffey and turned right. There were houses on their left and the river on the right. "Where are these men taking us?" thought Andy. "What are they going to do?" He thought of answers to his questions, and he didn't like them. These men were bad. "We need to do something quickly," thought Andy, but he didn't know what. He looked at Mary. She didn't look afraid. "The goodbye game," she said. "What?" thought Andy. What is she talking about? Why is she talking about a film? The Goodbye Game was a film about a French cook and his family. It was a very funny film, but... Mr. Blueshirt looked round quickly. "Stop talking," he said angrily. Andy looked at Mary again. He didn't understand. What was important about the film? Mary closed her eyes slowly. Then she opened them again. Of course! Now Andy understood. In the film, the cook is driving down the road with his 5-year-old son in the back of the car. The son puts his hands over his father's eyes. The car goes off the road into a tree, and all the doors open. The father is very angry, but maybe he and Mary... It was a dangerous thing to do, but they needed to get away from these men. He looked at Mary and closed one eye. She gave him a little smile. Andy closed his hand. Mary watched his hand. One finger came out, then a second, then a third. At the same time, Andy put his hands over Mr. Greenshirt's eyes, and Mary put hers over Mr. Blueshirt's. The two men shouted. Mr. Greenshirt took his hands off the wheel, and the car turned fast across the road. The river was now in front of them. Andy and Mary took their hands away quickly. Mr. Greenshirt put his hands back on the wheel. But the car was too fast, and the river was too close. "Left! Left!" Mr. Blueshirt shouted. But it was too late. There were shouts and noise in the car and on the street. There was rock music from the CD player. There was more noise. Then the sound of the car hitting the water. But the doors didn't open.